Today, we're talking about title insurance and title companies and all the crazy scams that happen, how to avoid them, and what to be on the lookout for. We've got our guest today, Shawn McCorkle. Thanks for joining us, and let's dive right in. This is Jessica Duncan. It's just my opinion, and I'm Jessica. There's no handbook to owning a home. That's why I go beyond the transaction to share my opinion for adulting made simple. I'm so excited today. I have one of my very, very best friends in the studio with me talking about title. She is the most experienced person I know when it comes to title. She is my go-to for all of my questions, and we are so glad you're here today. I have Ms. Shawn McCorkle, owner of Foundation Title and Escrow. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you, Jessica. It's a privilege to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So let's start with telling them a little bit of your background. There's so much knowledge there, and anytime I've got a crazy situation, which I always seem to come across, you are always my go-to because you always know the answer. How did you get this wisdom? Give us a little bit of information about your background.
Well, the title insurance business, the only way you can learn title insurance is by doing it. There's no school to go to. And about 35 years ago, I was still selling real estate.
Just a year or two?
Yeah, just a few years ago. And I was a very loyal customer to my title company. I got the opportunity to come work for them at some point, and I decided to do that. I didn't think I'd stay in it because I love sales so much, but I did, and I got to start teaching about title insurance and real-world sales training, and I fell in love with it. So I never went back to selling real estate, but what I really love is helping other people learn to sell. And the title insurance industry is where everything comes together at the end for the customer. It's a joy. I love to do closings. It's not my full-time job, but when I can, I love to jump in there and do closings because it's a celebration. For most people, it's the largest investment that they make.
Well, you say that, but a lot of places it's not a celebration. And that's one of the things I love about Foundation Title is y'all make it a celebration and y'all understand that importance. There are many places you close and it's just another signing of documents and we're almost a pain in their butt that we're there.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's always in the people that you have surrounding you and working for you. I know that we have some great people working for us. Not only do they do a good job, but they really care about the customers. They care about our realtors. They don't throw people under the bus. And there are a lot of moving parts in a transaction. And our office is kind of where everything comes together at the end. We are talking to everybody in the transaction. We're talking to both the realtors. We're talking to the home sellers, the buyers. We're talking to the surveyors and the home warranty people, any repair people that we need to collect invoices from. We're talking to the city and the county a lot of times, our underwriters. So we are gathering information from all parties in order to bring that closing to fruition.
So let's talk about that, though. So a lot of people don't understand what title does. And as a matter of fact, we did a poll on social media just to see how many people actually know what title does. And you would be probably not shocked to know that 14% said they absolutely know, which was not many people. 57% said, I have no clue. 42% said, I had a basic understanding. And I will say, not many people answered the question because I don't think they even know. And there are so many times I know I'm dealing in a transaction that people have no idea what title actually does. Can you give us a brief description and really explain what you do? We'll talk about in a transaction, but then outside of transactions as well, because there's need for a title there as well. But during a transaction, buying or selling, what does title do?
Well, I also will start by saying when I sold real estate, I had no idea what title insurance was. Those 7 years either. So there are a lot of people in the industry that really don't understand what it is. They just know they have to have it. Basically, whenever a piece of property is bought, sold, financed in any way, there is a record in the public record of that transaction. What we will do is once we get that contract sent to us, we immediately start the title search. We have an underwriter, and we use First American Title. We send that order to them. What they're going to do first is verify that legal description. There are a lot of errors in the public record. And so when you look up on the tax assessors what your legal description might be, most of the time it's an abbreviated legal description.
You know what? Speaking of that, I just saw one yesterday. I was writing a listing agreement, going to get the legal description, and in the tax records, it said, do not use on legal documents.
Yeah.
I was like, what? What? they're admitting on the tax site that this is wrong.
Yeah. Well, there are, like I say, a lot of errors in the public record, which is one of the big reasons why you want to have title insurance. We just had one this week where they did a quitclaim deed that was not executed properly. It basically created what we call a cloud on the title. It's not clear. So we had to go back and do a lot of corrective work in order to get that seller to be able to sell that right piece of property. There's a lot of handshake deals out there, especially in rural areas. And we had one example where the seller owned a big piece of property land. He had divided it a few years before and sold some off to some family. He still owned the south part of it. And the driveway was kind of a shared driveway, but mostly on his neighbor's property. And they had a good old boy agreement, hey, don't worry when you sell it. I'll be happy to let the new owners use that driveway. No problem. Well, we get to the closing, and guess what? That good old boy next door did not want to share that, and now he wanted the new buyers to pay for the use of that shared area that the driveway was in. The buyer had a couple of options, and what he opted to do, and we recommended, be careful about this kind of a agreement with people. It really has no legal standing, and at any time, he could deny you access. He ended up moving his driveway, so his driveway wasn't on that property, and so that was an easy solution for him, but it's not always possible. Sometimes you're denied access when people do quick claims or families are dividing up properties, and then they sell outside the family. There's not access to that piece of land from where it lies in the bigger picture. So that's one of the things that we do.
And that's important. I actually had a customer I helped a couple years ago. He was buying some land to build a house on. And luckily someone at work said, hey, just call Jessica before you go through with that. It was a for sale by owner situation. So wasn't any real estate agents involved. And luckily someone gave him some advice, just call me. So he did. And as I start looking at it, I'm like, well, this is landlocked. There's no road access to it. Is there a private road? Oh, well, there's a road that goes to it, and it's on his daughter's property, or it's on his property, but he's selling that house to the daughter, and so I'll still be able to use it. And I'm like, well, is there recorded deeded access? Like, no, we can't just take their word. We got to have documentation of this, not only for him, because he may build a house and can't get to it, but when he goes to sell it, this will be an issue that could come up, and I don't want people to invest in something they're not going to be able to sell in the future. So absolutely, that was something that came up, and luckily we were able to advise him around that, and come to find out the daughter would not put it in writing, who was buying the other property. So if we wouldn't have given that pushback and got it in writing, he could have built a house that he could have no access to.
Absolutely. And that's a case for a lawsuit and a lot of unhappiness in the home buying process. We definitely always advise that you get title insurance. When you close, if you have a mortgage or you're refinancing, the lender always requires a lender's policy of title insurance. They know how important it is. So even though buying owner's policies has always been optional, you're really doing yourself a disservice not to get title insurance.
And what is on average an owner's policy? It's issued at the same time, right?
Yes.
So it's pretty affordable?
Yeah, we have in Florida, we are one of 7 states that is called a simultaneous issue state, which means if you get the owner's policy and the lender's policy at the closing, you get a substantial discount on that second policy. We have to charge the minimum. We charge $100, and that is the one thing that can change. Wherever you close, they can charge whatever they want. They just have to charge the minimum for the simultaneously issued policy.
And what does that policy do? So title insurance policy, what exactly is that?
We're ensuring that the property that you're purchasing is free and clear of any liens, encumbrances, any levies, past ownership, frauds, forgeries, undisclosed heirs. There's about 70 different ways you can lose your property, all mostly because of errors or things that weren't done correctly in the past. Title insurance insures the property. We don't care about the house or anything else on there. We're ensuring that piece of property that you are buying on the day of closing, you're getting it today free and clear of anything that you could owe on it.
Or that, 3 generations ago, this was passed down through a family and it was done incorrectly and went to someone that it couldn't, and they're going to show up on my doorstep one day and go, yeah, I really own this land, you don't.
Right, undisclosed heirs. And if some of those circumstances do happen, basically your title insurance policy insures to fight that claim, to make sure it is a true claim. And if it is, title insurance is going to pay you. The worst case scenario, you're going to have to be paid on that house. So if you paid $400,000 for the house and you got title insurance, we're going to have to pay you $400,000 for that house if you have to give it up. But the title insurance also pays for the defense of your property. So we will hire the attorneys. We will fight to defend that your ownership is legal in that property.
So I have an example of a situation where a title company made a mistake, and luckily he had title insurance, and they were able to get it fixed, but it would have been a situation that I think title insurance would have kicked in. I went to sell his house, and I pulled it up in the tax rolls, and I said, it's not in his name, which I always check, and that's because of the scams out there, which we'll talk about in a minute, but there's a lot of scams, so I always make sure it's in the person's name and make sure there's no one else on title that I need to be aware of. Pulled it up, and I'm like, wow, it's not in his name. So then I started digging. I'm like, oh, it's in the seller's name that he bought it from still. That's weird. He's owned this house for 4 or 5 years. Yeah. Come to find out, there was an error in the deed. There was only one witness instead of 2 signed off on it. It was sent to the county and never recorded.
Wow.
Would title insurance have covered him?
Title insurance in that case would cover them, I believe, because that is really an error on the part of the county. Mm-hmm. And basically, we would probably have to pay that out if there was a claim on it, if it couldn't be resolved. Mm-hmm.
And then did I mention the gentleman who had signed the deed was dead? He had passed? Yeah, so we couldn't. We tried to just reach out and get him to do a signed corrected one. Yeah, but he had passed.
Yeah, that's one of those big headaches that we have. But those are the kind of puzzles we've got to find the pieces to and fit them all together so we can get that piece of property clear again.
But that's a big example of why title matters, right? Because that simple mistake, if you're not with a good title company, that's going to stand behind it, but also try and prevent them. People are human. People make mistakes. But if they're going to correct it and try and deal with it, that's really the key. But if you're not with a good title company, here's a crazy situation, right?
Yeah, and we should have received that recorded deed back.
Well, it wasn't your title company, but yes.
Yeah, but whoever did that should have received a copy of that recorded deed. And that would be a big red flag if you hadn't gotten that within a few weeks.
Absolutely. So how would you explain title's role as far as, do you represent the buyer, the seller? I know what I tell customers, but how would you really explain who you represent in the transaction?
We are the neutral party in the middle that collects all the information. We do not represent either side, anyone. We are there to put the deal to bed. So everything gets closed out, mortgages get paid off on that property. That piece of property has to be free and clear the day that we close. So that's what we do. That's our interest. There's one part of the closing that we do a municipal lien search in Florida on every closing that we do, unless the people tell us not to, which I never recommend.
But if they tell me not to, I'm going to make them sign a couple pieces of paper, say I told you to do it.
And we will too. We'll have them sign an affidavit saying that they requested not to have a municipal lien search. But basically, that is a search. That's not insurance like title insurance. We are searching, paying a company that does this. They're professionals in doing that. But they're going to go out and reach to utilities. They're going to talk to the county or the city. They're going to try to make sure that there's nothing owing on that property that necessarily wouldn't create a lien, but that is owed on that property. Well, a municipal lien search should have revealed that. Mm-hmm. We don't cover any of those kind of losses or any of those kind of claims because it's just a search that we provide.
Right.
But that's why we do it, to make sure none of those things are out there. It used to be that you couldn't even get your gas turned on if the gas hadn't been paid in full by the seller. They wouldn't even think of turning it on unless you wanted to pay their last gas bill.
Who wants to do that?
Yeah, and the utilities generally do not file a lien in the public record against the property. But we are seeing that happen more and more now. So they know that if it's a lien in the public record, it'll be revealed when we do the title search on that property. But remember, we're searching the property. We're not searching the buyer or the seller. We're searching that property So if there are liens out there that attach to the person but not to the property, that's none of our business. It has to be a lien that also attaches to that property.
So let's talk about that, because I've had people put their children's name on the house, and then they go to sell the house and all the kids have to sign, and then, oh, there's a tax lien against the son, or there's a child support lien against one of the children, or child support due against one of the children, and had nothing to do with the property, but the parents put their kid's name on the property.
Yeah, there are just a few circumstances where it does lien against the property if they are owners of it. It is an asset, considered an asset, and in a legal situation, especially unpaid child support, that's the thing we see the most. That has to be collected, and there's no getting around that, not one little way. So be careful when you put someone on that property. I know a lot of people are doing that, and I really noticed it the last few years where they're adding their kids to their title. So down the road, if something happens to them, their kids get the property and don't have to go through any legal schmeagle.
Right, but there's easier ways and better ways to do that, which we actually talk about on one of our podcasts for planning for the inevitable when we die, right, with Amanda Elliott. So definitely listen to that if you're thinking about doing that, because we've got some great tips to avoid that. But you're right. A ton of people lately I've been seeing it where they want to do that. And I'm like, oh, there's caution. Hang on, be careful.
Yeah, call us anytime. I mean, you don't have to have a closing going on with us, but call us if you are thinking about doing anything like that, and ask us what the consequences of adding someone to that are. Also, when they do that, a lot of people will do a quitclaim, and they want to do it themselves so they don't have to pay an attorney to do it. A quitclaim is probably the biggest offender in the public record of clouds on titles. They have to be done right.
So let's explain what a quitclaim deed is. And really, this is maybe a time that they are not buying or selling necessarily, but may need you. So explain first what a quitclaim deed is.
A quitclaim deed, let's say that you own a piece of property and you want to quitclaim, you want to give me 50% interest in that property. So you could quit 50% of your ownership of that to me, and we would give a quitclaim deed to put me on there as 50% owner. So you're quitting your 100%, whatever your ownership is in there, and you're giving some of that ownership to someone else.
But really, it's not, no search has been done. You really don't know what you're getting. So it's not necessarily for a buying situation, a transaction situation. And I mean, I think the details back to real estate school was basically you want to do a quitclaim deed whenever you are clearing up a defect or clearing up a minor issue, such as a spelling on a name or something like that is what they said. But you don't really want to do this when you're buying and selling property, correct?
Not really. And we would do it in that circumstance to clear things up. But mostly what I see or am questioned about is I want to add my kids, I want to add my parents, or I want to add my sister to the title of my property.
Add my spouse.
Yes. And by the way, in Florida, we're a homestead state. So if you are single and you buy a piece of property and it is your homestead where you go home to every night, you own that property and you've got a mortgage on it. Then you meet Mr. Wonderful and you marry that person. Y'all spend a night in that house. Mr. Wonderful now owns 50% of your homestead in the state of Florida. And so be aware of those things. It's not something you can negotiate. In Florida, wherever your homestead is, and each person or couple is entitled to a homestead, one, then both parties have equal ownership in that property.
You know, I always warn couples about that because we see it a lot. You know, especially later on in life, people getting remarried, things like that. They already own a house and they don't realize it. They're like, well, no, I own this before I met them. It's just in my name. I'm like, well, wait a minute. The day you get married and they spend one night in their house as their homestead, they now own 50% of your house. Interesting thing is, I've had attorneys disagree with me on this. But as I dug in more, what I learned is, yes, you can fight it. Yes, you can prove maybe that you owned it before and they didn't financially contribute. But you're talking about an expensive court case, right? You're having to fight and prove that. And there are ways that you could fight and prove that they actually have no claim to it, but it's going to cost you. From the assumed beginning, they're going to have a claim to it without spending a lot of money to fight and prove that they have no claim to that.
Yeah, in Florida, I would say you'd be hard-pressed to win that court case because of our statutes in Florida about homestead. So just be aware is what we like to tell people.
Be very aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that. So quitclaim deed, we talked about what it is. So when would someone need to call you that doesn't have to do with buying or selling? When would they call you?
Well, let's say they might be refinancing and they want us to do that closing. We could do that. Wouldn't usually involve realtors, just the lenders. Maybe they are dividing their property with their family. What we really have seen issues with recently are surveys and lack of surveys. We recently had a family that this happened to, and they have owned the property for over 100 years. It was about 23 acres. They had quitclaimed and quitclaimed and quitclaimed in the public record. They had recorded them, so that was good, because a lot of times when families do that, they do not record the quitclaim deeds. They hold them. In fact, we had a gentleman on the last instance where he said, I didn't record it because I didn't think I was supposed to record it until after they passed. So he held on to it. But title insurance also does cover any unrecorded claims like that. So that is another good reason for title insurance. But a quitclaim is done a lot of times in families. If you're dividing your property anyway or giving part of your property to someone else, we really need to be involved in that. We'd like to do a title search. You can call us if you're not doing a transaction, but you need a title search. A friend of mine called me 2 weeks ago. Her mother passed and said, my mom's lived in this house for almost 80 years. I want to sell it, but I don't have any idea if anything is owed or if there are any liens, anything on that property, how ownership is taken. So she asked if we could do a title search for her. So we did that. We just charged the fee that the underwriter charges us. And then if it turns into a transaction for us, we reimburse them that if they're going to sell that property in the future.
All right. So I know over the years, you've definitely had some good stories. Tell me about a nightmare situation that happened. Tell me about an exciting title situation that's happened over the years and how you resolved it.
Well, the biggest nightmares we have right now involve fraud. And it is very, very real out there. In the last 5 years, it is crazy. Almost a week doesn't go by when we don't see some little indication of some type of fraud. Most of the time, people out there doing fraudulent things are watching a transaction happen in the background. We recently had a situation where we had a fraudulent payoff. Either the buyer or the seller or the realtor's email is not secure. So people hack into that. They wait for the right time because they're watching what's going on. And then on this particular instance, the seller had a payoff to Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper's had several big frauds lately, and we always get notice of those type of things. The day of the closing, we got an email from Mr. Cooper fraudulently changing the amount of the payoff. It came to us not from the person we've been dealing with, but it looked very, very authentic. We go through, you really need a third-party platform that verifies payoffs, wiring, all those instructions, which we have, called Closing Lock. Makes it very secure. We ran the payoff through Closing Lock, fraud. So that was over $300,000 that if you weren't paying attention and you just did that closing that day, and most fraud does happen right at the end.
Last minute changes.
Because they know you're ready to close and you're ready to get there, so they send it. But thankfully, it was caught and there was no fraud.
Yeah, there's just so many cases of scammers out there,
A lot.
From when they close on the property now, the buyers are getting these statements that say, hey, pay us for a copy of your deed. They don't need to. Y'all are sending them a copy for free. There's just so many, the wire fraud. Wire fraud's been huge, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about wire fraud.
It has been crazy. By the way, I was going to say about those fraudulent requests for any kind of payment. Whenever you get anything like that after you have closed a house, call your realtor, call the title company and say, I got this. Do I really owe this? But the fraud is really crazy. Wire fraud is tough to catch. The domestic fraudsters are very sophisticated. They may just change one letter where it says land, it may say lands in an email address or in a contact. So you've just got to be so vigilant in that, and you've got to have third-party verification a lot of times on anything that involves money.
I tell all of our customers from the beginning, I warn them about wire fraud, and I said, I am never going to email you wiring instructions. No one else is ever going to email you wiring instructions. Before you wire money, you are going to call them over the phone, not from a phone number on an email.
Right.
From the phone number I gave you from the time you went under contract and I said, this is your title company, you're going to call that number and verify over the phone. You're not going to take a number off an email because that could be a fraudulent number.
Yeah, and sometimes people say Google the company and use that phone number. Not a bad idea, but not 100%, because these fraudsters are also covering their backs.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Setting up these fake Facebook pages and Google pages out there. So you've got to depend on the people you are dealing with in the transaction. Wire fraud is a big concern for us every single day, and so we take that very seriously. Let me talk a minute about vacant land transactions. That's where we see the most fraud because it's the easiest transaction to fraud, especially people who own land that haven't built anything on it possibly, and they don't have a mortgage. A home that's been sitting empty for a while. People watch these things. But if you have a vacant piece of land and you are selling it and we get the offer, we get the contract on that, we have a process in place, and a lot of the title companies are doing this because we have to. We will send a letter to the owner of record, and we will let them know, hey, congratulations on the sale of your property at 123 Anywhere Street. If you've sold this, great. If not, please call us immediately. We actually had that happen recently in our office where we got all the way down to the closing. It was someone in your office, actually. And your broker and I, we were making calls and sending letters because we already were pretty sure this was fraudulent. Mm-hmm. The prospective seller never would answer the phone. I called once from a different phone number. He did answer the phone the one time anybody talked to him was when I did. His name didn't really match his accent. That was another red flag for me. I asked if we could FaceTime each other so I could see his ID. It wasn't convenient for him. So on the downside of that, and basically what happened is towards the end, he just didn't show up, didn't answer any calls, but we stopped that fraud. The way it was found is that letter was sent to the owner of that property, and the owner had been in a rehab for a medical situation for 6 months. His brother was getting his mail infrequently.
Oh, wow.
His brother calls and said, hey, I'm the brother of Mr. So-and-so. He's not selling that property. So I'm like, tell me your name. Told me his name. We looked it up. It was the brother. He was also actually on this, and the fraudulent seller had a power of attorney for this brother.
Oh, wow.
So I said, are you at a place where I could FaceTime with you right now to look at your ID? They were driving, but he said, yes, hold on a minute. My wife will give it to you. And so they did. While they were driving down the road, they FaceTimed me. We saw his ID. We were able to go through and check it on a site like you all use, Forewarn. Mm-hmm. And Closing Lock also has that verification. And so we already knew that we had a fraud, but we were confirming that he was not selling. But we then did ask him if he was interested in selling. We had a realtor with a willing buyer. So
right.
Usually a good way to tell a fraud on a listing like that is if the sales price that they're asking is unbelievable.
Too good to be true. I
know that to be true.
There was a lot on Pensacola Beach that there was a fraud case on, and someone had listed it for sale at a too good to be price. Yeah. And I think they had like 25 offers in less than 24 hours. And I actually got several calls on it, and I immediately was like, wait a minute, something's wrong. This lot should not be priced like this. Yeah. But, I get those calls all the time, people wanting to sell property that they may or may not own. And so I'm very diligent about making sure they actually own the property, I run their phone number through Forewarn. It tells me if it's really registered to them and if they really own that property, just to make sure, hey, wait a minute. And now there are times where I have to ask more questions because something doesn't seem right. But you know me, I'm going to dig in and find out. If something doesn't seem right, I dig in. That's why I always end up with these crazy situations, because I don't let little clues like that go by.
Yeah.
I want to dig in and find out what's really going on and make sure I'm protecting whoever I need to protect in that situation, or I'm not being scammed.
Yes. And most of the time, people are in a rush to do these closings. They want a quick closing. There are all kinds of red flags if you're paying attention. Unfortunately, a lot of times in our business, our phone's always ringing. Things are always happening. People are coming in and out. There's so much going on that you have to be vigilant about every single detail when you're working a real estate deal.
So obviously, I think y'all are the best title company in town. That's why I use y'all. Foundation Title and Escrow, definitely my favorite title company in town. But let's talk about what makes a good title company. So let's say they're in another state that y'all are not in, although y'all are in a lot of states. Let's talk about what makes a good title company and what should someone be looking for. Maybe they're not going through a transaction where they have a real estate agent advising them, but they're just doing a quitclaim deed or a deal within the family. What do they need to look for in a good title company?
I would say check out their website and see what kind of experience their people have. You don't have to be in this business a long time to be good at it, but you do have to have some people that have a pretty long-term amount of experience, because
30 plus years, definitely good.
I think that's
You've
going to be
about
okay.
seen it all.
Yeah. But, within 5 to 10 years, you get a pretty good schooling on this. And most of the title companies out there do have experienced people. It's a great field to get into if you're young and don't really want to go to college, but you're looking for a career. This is how you learn it, by starting at the front desk and learning this business, because that's the only way to do it. But check out who their underwriters are. Make sure they're a credible underwriter. And also talk to them on the phone. And when you call them, make sure they call you back. If you email them, see how long it takes them to communicate with you. That's the biggest frustration people have with real estate and with title companies, is that they didn't call me back. None of us like to be ignored when we're dealing with a big transaction with our property. So make sure that they are calling you back. See what their experience is. Maybe look at their reviews and how people are Google reviewing them. So all those things can add up. Or just call your local title agent. Call us at Foundation, and we will give you a referral to someone that we know that could help you find the right person wherever you're going to be. We have national networks of some foundation in about 7 states, but we have a national network of agents where we can refer you to somebody that we know you can count on.
Absolutely. And I know what I look for is, I've had situations in the past with title companies that do not pull those permit searches and make sure that the permits have been closed on the property. And instead, they just have someone sign a document at closing that said there may be an open permit and we're not worried about it. Mm-hmm. And they didn't even realize that. And I had an investor that I worked with for a long time who had bought a lot of properties before he came to me with a different title company. And every time I went to sell one, there was an open permit. And the reason why it was a big deal is because we had a major roof code change in the meantime. So that permit for the roof was open. We can't close it now because we have a new code and it's not installed to the new code. The roof wasn't. So to be able to sell the property and close the permit, he had to have a new roof put on. He said, well, I don't understand. Why did my old title company didn't catch this? I said, well, remember how I was telling you need to go with a good title company? This is why. This is why I moved you.
Yeah.
They weren't looking at that stuff before, and it can cost someone a lot of money. That's a big deal. I always ask the agent on the other side, who do you use for title? And then that will really direct me on how much I need to push on moving that to a different title company, because with the amount of business I've done, I've had some bad experiences with some of the title companies in town. I had one couple months ago. The buyer really did not care what title company it is, even though we stressed the importance of picking a good title company. Even if it means a little bit more out of your pocket at closing, you really need to pick a good title company. Are you really going to worry about maybe $1,000 on a $300,000 or $350,000 transaction? What's $1,000 to make sure it's right? She didn't want to do it. We found out shortly after closing that the title company never pulled an estoppel. And so for those that don't know, an estoppel is what you get from the HOA that says there's no outstanding debt against the property from the HOA, which can take your house, right? They can foreclose on the house.
Yes, they can.
It makes sure that there's no violations on it. There's, no fines because of different things with the property not being taken care of. That's a very important piece of paper.
Yeah.
And we learned that they never pulled an estoppel. And I asked them, I said, why didn't you pull an estoppel? I don't understand. We sent you documents with the contract saying there was an HOA. We provided that information to you. There was an addendum to the contract that said that there was an HOA, as well as there's an HOA doc that says there's an HOA and how much it is per year, as well as whenever we did the open email, we told you there was an HOA. And they said, well, we called that particular HOA that you said. And they said, oh, yeah, we don't handle that anymore. That doesn't mean there's not one. Right. They assumed it had dissipated, which wasn't the case. So title is very important. It's so much more important than a lot of people really realize. And I appreciate the service y'all do, the due diligence y'all do to protect our customers. We can't thank you enough.
I appreciate that. That's how we stay in business, is by doing a good job and communicating with our customers. That particular incident would have been discovered most likely in a municipal lien search.
Absolutely.
And although we don't insure over those things that would be uncovered in a municipal lien search, we do work to clear them up.
You would have at least told us.
We absolutely would tell
here.
You. Yeah. Sometimes it's a phone call from our office where we can clear them up, but most of the time we need the seller's assistance to clear up a permit or pay a fine or negotiate a payoff on something. A lot of times on investment properties or land that sat for a long time, maybe they didn't mow it for a while or it got a bunch of trash on it and they didn't get it cleaned up and the county put a municipal lien on there, which wouldn't show up in the title search. Well, once that piece of property transacts and your new buyer has it, guess who owns that bill for the cleanup?
Absolutely.
The new buyer.
Speaking of scams and making sure all the permits are closed and money's paid, we had a customer call us 2 days ago that bought probably about 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And before closing, they had a new roof put on. The invoice went to closing. Y'all made sure it was closed. It was paid and the permit was closed. So they called and said, hey, we had someone come to our door who says she's the seller of when we bought this house a year and a half, 2 years ago. She was the seller and that the roofing company is saying they were never paid. And so can I pay you $500 to let the inspector get on your roof? And she called because she didn't feel comfortable with this. And I said, well, wait. Don't do anything. First of all, why does an inspector need to get on the roof that's involved with payment? If there's not a payment, that's one thing. If the permit's open, the county needs to inspect it, that's one thing. But those two don't go together. They don't have anything to do with each other. And why is she offering to pay you for this? Alarm bells just went off. I said, please don't do anything. What if they get up there and they fall? They're going to sue you. Like this could be some sort of scam. First time I've ever heard of it. We immediately pulled the ALTA, verified that, yes, title paid that particular roofing company for that roof out of closing.
Wow.
I called her back and I said, that is not the issue. Title paid them. It is on your ALTA. It shows where they paid them. If that lady's having a problem with that, tell her to reach out to the title company that paid them and let it be resolved that way. But something, what a weird, this is a new scam. I'm still trying to figure out what their motive is, but it's something new.
Probably to get up on that roof and have an accident.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, what else could they be doing?
I mean, it's just crazy out there. There's just no limit to what people will do out there. So you've got to be vigilant. All of us in the industry and buyers and sellers, we've all got to be vigilant for each other out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shawn, for being here. You are always such a resource and my go-to and one of my best friends. I just really appreciate you being here, sharing your knowledge. Thank you so much for all you do for our customers. And if anyone has any questions for you, we'll put your number, contact info below. They'll absolutely can reach out to you. I'm sure you would not mind.
Wouldn't mind at all.
You're just such a good resource for this community where you're always willing to share your knowledge, whether with agents, people, brokerages. You're just always wanting to be that wealth of knowledge and share it with the community. And we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica.
So if you have any questions for Shawn, contact info will be in the show notes. So make sure you reach out and talk to her. So let's talk about our home hack. So as you know, each week we do a home hack. It's just some gadget, website, app, cool thing that makes owning a home easier, better, just something to help with this adulting. This week, my home hack is actually very relevant to title and Escambia and Santa Rosa County, which are the two main areas in Florida that I do business in. So Escambia and Santa Rosa County, if you go to both of their websites and you search for property fraud alerts. They have both added this. So you can register your property, all of them, or just one, or however many you own. You can register your property with your email address and your phone number so that you are emailed from the county anytime there is a title change or deed change on your property. Great free resource straight from the county. So that's our home hack this week. Make sure you register it on all of your properties so that you're aware if anything's happening. Even if it's been moved, it may be already happened, but at least you can start digging in pretty fast and you're aware of it to hopefully get it corrected fast. So that's our home hack of the week. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe so that you never miss an episode. If you have any questions or comments or something you want us to talk about on the show, please DM me and we may just mention you on the show. Thanks for listening. This is Jessica Duncan. And remember, this is just my opinion for adulting made simple.